What's happening, everybody? And how the hell might y'all be doing out there? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom Drum Podcast, assuming you're a repeat listener, and if this is your first time, well then welcome. Today's guest is drummer Shane Medanich of Brooklyn skate thrash band Slashers. Slashers has been rising on the local scene, has completed a couple West Coast tours with another one on the way, and their new self-titled album is out this Friday, August 2nd. And of course, with a follow-up release gig at Hard Times in Bushwick, Brooklyn, having themselves a day drinking skate thrash party. So get up on it if you're nearby. But Shane and I get into all sorts of good stuff, including his first junk drum set, touring with his San Francisco band HIghtower, who he still gigs with 18 years later. Plus, you know, rock and roll rodeo bands, if that's a thing, and the origins of Slashers, plus a whole lot more. Speaking of the new Slashers record, it was actually pressed by my one and only sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking to put out vinyl for your project, go on over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com to check out the vinyl coloring, packaging, mastering, and more options, and you can do it all in the real-time quote generator to get yourself a price on the go. Need assistance with design or packaging? They can help you, and they print both 12 and 7-inch records in both 150 and 180 gram variants, and they print small runs of 100 and larger runs up into the thousands. And that is NewOrleansRecordPress.com. Check them out. Crash Bang Boom Podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, my SoundCloud page, as well as my YouTube page, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and more. If you like what you hear, feel free to check out any of the previous 140 plus episodes and give me a like, a subscription, a positive rating, and or all of the aforementioned. All right, here we go, y'all. Shane Medanich of Slashers, a.k.a. Von Medanich. Brooklyn skate thrash in the house, y'all. Get up on it. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
All right, Shane Medanich, what's happening, man? That's an impressive last name you got there. Of course, Slashers from Brooklyn. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for swinging by. I have last name envy, and I interview a lot of people that have a good bit of hair on their head, which you don't, nor do I. So I don't have hair envy. I do, however, in having the last name Smith, have a little bit of last name envy. So what's up with this? What's going on with this last name? What is the descent here?
Austrian.
Oh, okay.
I guess back in the old school country it was Von Medanich.
Von Medanich.
The Von fell off in the ocean on the way over or something.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you been to Austria?
Have not.
I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to go to Hallstatt, Austria specifically. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's one of the most idyllic, like Lord of the Rings looking place. It's like a castle on a mountain with a giant lake and like this little kind of looks like a Bavarian town of some kind. It's a medley of strange things. I've never seen anything like it. It looks fake, but it is apparently real, and it lives in Austria, and I need to go there, man.
I heard they make screensavers out of it.
Yeah, I bet they do, as they should.
And I got to renew my passport.
There you go.
So
yeah, as do I, man. Well, congrats on this new Slashers record, self-titled, coming out August 3rd. Mm-hmm. No, August 2nd, right? Playing a gig August 3rd.
Yep, dropping on the onlines August 2nd, having a record release show August 3rd at Montana's, or Hard Times Christmas Liquors, it's called now.
Nice. Y'all playing
Bushwick,
outside?
Playing outside.
Let's hope for good weather.
Hope for good weather. Sounds great out there.
Right
all
on.
that dead wood just absorbs all the sound up.
Yeah, I DJ over there. I'm a fan of that place.
Oh,
it's
nice.
a bizarre nexus of cross streets and weird things that are happening in Bushwick right there.
Yeah, we'll get some foot audience, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about setting up a little flat bar, a little jump ramp right out on the sidewalk there. Perfect.
Hey, man, if it's skate thrash, you got to incorporate the theme, right? You got to do it justice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, tell me a little bit about the recording of this record and the process, I guess, for you as a drummer. I know previously y'all released the EP with the 2 songs. Mm-hmm. This is a full record. Y'all are doing vinyl for this release, doing all this stuff. Tell me a little bit about the process of you recording it and that whole thing.
Full record, vinyl. We recorded it in the fall. Just came off a West Coast tour, so we were tour tight.
There you go.
Had that going for us. I banged out all the drum tracks in one day.
There you go.
Got brand new heads for my drum kit, made it sound all sweet.
Look at you, man.
And then brought my whole drums over to the studio to Growl House.
Yeah.
And there's this dope-ass drum kit already set up that Ryan uses with other bands, and it was like everything was freshy, and I was like, I'm just going to use this.
Right on. Ryan, of course, plays in Mutilation Rights and also Body Stuff
Shout
here
out.
in Brooklyn. Shout out. Has a studio in Long Island City, correct?
Correct.
Right on. So then it sounds like if you knocked everything out in one day, then you feeling pretty damn good going into it.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling, isn't it?
I have a lot of fun playing these songs. I enjoy playing drums more now than like I ever have.
Really?
I've always enjoyed it, but I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning and
growing within the material and enjoying the process of it all.
Yeah. Keep it in the wrists.
Absolutely. I remember, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, you just showed me a picture of you playing your first drum set. I'll pull out one of mine later as well. We can compare how ridiculous, although I got to say, you definitely are winning the ridiculousness, and we'll talk about that for sure.
Junkyard style.
As far as setup is concerned. But for now, I guess you were originally from New York, but you'd lived out in San Francisco for a while and then now came back to New York. And via touring had visited many places and I guess decided to come back. But how did Slashers start in the first place?
I met Blake through the local heavy music scene.
Blake Charlton, guitarist of many
Charlton.
bands.
Mm-hmm. And
Charlton, not Charlton.
I don't know.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Interesting.
Is it SH or CH?
It's CH, but
yeah,
we don't know.
Let's go with Charleston.
Charleston Chew.
That's what I'm thinking.
So me and Blake became friends. And it turned out we both skateboarded.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, both of our other bands we were in stopped being active. So we just became like skate buddies.
Yeah.
Started skating together. And then I was like, we should start a band with all skateboarders.
Right.
And then without missing a beat, he goes, yeah, we'll call it Slashers. And then me and him just started jamming. We got like 5 songs together. To be in the band, you had to skate, though. You had to be a skateboarder.
Fair enough. I mean, if it's going to be skate thrash, let's keep it with the theme. Yeah. It's like having the ramp at the release party. You got to stick with it.
We're having fun, Then he found Jesse
Adelson, who is also a fellow bandmate.
Yeah, Beast
both
Modulus,
of ours. Yes.
Prostitution.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Tried out a couple singers before we found Jamie. Tried out 2 girls and 2 guys and landed on Jamie.
Split the difference with Jamie. Oh!
Yeah, totally. Hit the ground running pretty quick,
I feel like y'all did, for sure.
We just booked a tour right out of the gates. We've only been in a band for 2 years. Did the West Coast twice, East Coast once.
Got a third time on the West Coast coming up soon, right?
The Sierra Nevadas. We're doing Denver to San Francisco.
Nice,
Doing
man.
about 7 shows.
The places with legal weed. That's a good way. A to Z connection. I like this.
Indeed. Yeah, the regionals.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And,
y'all also went down to New Orleans and ended up down there a little bit prior to Mardi Gras, I believe, on one of the last runs that y'all did. Got to hang out with some of my crazy peoples down there, man. It's crazy down there, man.
It got crazy. That was a real grand finale. That was the only show there was ever like fights at of ours.
There were fights that night?
Yeah.
Really?
We played with some dudes from Alabama, some real Southern fried hardcore guys, and
oh boy.
And then there was a dance party after our show, and the 2 crowds started mixing.
Oh boy.
And everyone was hammered, and it was like, what is that? Mixing blood and water?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Oil and water
Oil
and blood
and water.
and vinegar and wine.
Yeah, gas and fire. Yeah.
Someone thrown across the room, and I see shirtless Blake charging. I'm thinking, oh, great. All our profit is going to go to bailing Blake out of jail now. But it was all good. We got out of there unscathed. It was a perfect last show.
Yeah, right? A good, nice climax. That's what we like at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm. End of the tour.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned going out to California twice previously. How have those runs gone thus far and going out there?
They were great. Pretty much wrote themselves. Like I lived in San Francisco for 13 years.
Okay.
And I was in a band, this band HIghtower. I still play with them. Those guys live out there. And we toured a lot. And I had all these connections through that band and through skateboarding.
Okay.
And it was pretty easy to book a tour.
Yeah, the skateboarding network and like punk scenes and house parties, there seems to be a common thread between a lot of those things that I think once you're in that world, which it seems as though Slashers has been as well, you can kind of benefit from having those connections. It sounds like that's the case.
We're lucky because, the skateboard community is the most supportive. Skateboarding is something you can't fake,
Right.
I think the skateboarding community has helped us more than the music world,
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I think being part of that scene, and I mean, it's one of the distinctions I'd even like to ask you about is that I think, y'all fall within the subgenre of like skate thrash, skate punk kind
That's
of.
the thing. We can play
thing.
a punk show. We can play a hardcore show. We can play
Thrash
a
bands.
thrash show. We can play a metal show.
Yeah.
We can play a crazy skateboard event.
Yeah.
And we belong at all of them,
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool.
I mean, I think in going back to like
crossover.
That's the thing. It's DRI's crossover record was kind of, I feel like, one of the first things.
Totally.
But in listening to it, if you devoid of like the skate themes and the artwork on the cover and everything, it still kind of just sounds like thrash with maybe a little bit of a punk element, maybe a little bit of that.
Definitely.
So would you say that is when people say skate thrash or whatever that is, that maybe it's thrash with maybe like skate themes and maybe a little bit of a punk element? Is that the idea? It's kind of hard to define.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that we're skateboarders is the element. I mean, the songs aren't, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 songs are about skateboarding.
Yeah.
But like, I don't care what your band sounds like. If you're skateboarders, you're a skate band. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see the support of the Brooklyn skate community coming out for y'all, man. It's been
Those House of Vans shows really did that for us. We got to
amazing.
Shout out House of Vans
for sure.
Those shows got a whole younger, like urban crowd of super diverse
everything.
Yeah,
it's been incredible. Whenever I go there, I realize, man, the skate scene is everything that you just mentioned, and it seems to be a pretty
and it's a lot
open-minded
of these
party.
kids. It's their first punk show, their first time they're ever seeing like a heavy band.
Right.
It's really cool.
For sure, because I imagine that a good bit of it, if not the percentage of it, is probably hip hop.
Yeah.
So then but then some of the origins of early skating, like I grew up skateboarding as well. And I mean, for me, it was always like listening to thrash music when I was skating and all that. So I think that extends back quite a good bit. So it's interesting to them to kind of return to the roots to some extent in the modern times and witness something that y'all are doing, I think.
There's a lot to learn for these young bucks.
Absolutely.
Learn their history, learn about JFA and the faction.
Yeah.
Bad Brains.
It was amazing when I started skating, but then I kind of stopped at the time when skateboards, the decks specifically, started to all kind of look the same and that the tail and the nose was similar. I was skating, I guess, in the like 80s and 90s when it was, the nose was shorter, but you used to have big tails or whatever and like all that shit. And I loved it, man. I fucked my ankles up pretty good. To this day, my ankles are a little fucked up from skating, I got to say.
Yeah, my right one's a little deformed, but it works.
Is it?
Cosmetic damage only.
Right. Nothing too internal that would affect your bass drum foot?
No, not at all.
Yeah. No major sprains either from skating that have affected your hands?
No. I feel like I might want to address a shoulder issue pretty soon after this next trip.
I fractured my shoulder 2 months ago, and my right arm is still a little fucked up.
Yeah, I think it's just from wear and tear. It's the hi-hat,
Yeah.
I heard your interview with Dez from High on Fire. He was saying he just had surgery and stuff. So
right.
It really perked my ears up.
Hopefully avoid that somehow.
Yeah.
The surgical aspect of it anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to get this tour done and get it checked out. But
yeah, for sure,
should be good.
Yeah, man. Is it a slippery slope in being a quote-unquote skate band when playing shows and then skating while y'all are out? Because especially for a drummer, man, I mean, you jack your foot up, you're going to be in a bit of you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, people always ask that, but...
I tell you what, I've sprained knock on wood, man, because I've sprained my ankle a few different times. And once again, that was compounded over the years of skating and playing football and doing all this dumb shit and jumping out of trees and God only knows what, BMXing, all that. But I've sprained it since I've been in New York 2 or 3 different times. One time on my birthday, jumping over a fence, drunk, to try to get my cat that had escaped out of the house.
Yeah, cats.
I fucked that ankle up. There was absolutely no way that I could have played with my right foot. Zero. It was so swollen. I couldn't put a shoe on. I couldn't put a sock on. I couldn't stand on. I couldn't move it. I assumed I fractured it. I did something. They're like, no. But so I don't know if it's just wear and tear or what. But damn, it was bad.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everything on my body is slightly fucked up. So
yeah,
just balances out.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I haven't had to deal with major injuries on the road or anything. So
Good job, man. Good job.
I always imagine, like my wrist, I'll duct tape a drumstick in my hand or something. You know?
Right. Yeah. I've seen I've seen some guys, I guess, if they're out on the road, they can always wear like braces on their wrist or something just in case. I don't know if you want to be that careful, but nah.
Not my thing.
You're OG. If you were a bull rider, you wouldn't wear a mask?
I'm not riding any bulls.
You're like,
anyway.
fuck riding a bunch of bulls. Whenever I see those dudes riding bulls, they're like, man, I'm fucking old school. I don't wear no mask. I'm like, dude, you are on top of a fucking bull that can do 3 of 4 god-awful things to you, one of which is you get thrown off, your arm doesn't get disconnect from the rope that's tied around it, then you get trampled, then you get gorged, then you get like bucked into like the stratosphere.
I mean, are there any rodeo bands? Rodeo rock?
Man, I'm thinking that's the next subgenre.
Bull rider bands?
Bull rider bands. That would tie it together for me personally, as someone who enjoys rock and roll and like a skosh of violence. That would be kind of nice for me personally.
Just handle that Southwest circuit.
Yeah.
Texas circuit.
Fuck yeah, man. It'd be so good. So we've touched upon drumming and a little bit of touring. I want to ask you more about some of those early tours you went on. It always fascinates me, kind of bands coming up and the routes that they do and the cities and the people that they meet and the whole fascinating element of that is touring. But originally, why the drums? How'd you end up playing the drums in the first place?
I've been into music like as long as I can remember.
Did you have a musical family?
No one played, but you know,
music was on in the house.
Music was on in the house.
Yeah, at least you had that.
Yeah, music was always on in the house. Been in bands since I was 15, 16.
Yep.
Played live first when I was 16.
Okay.
High school battle of bands.
It's about the same for me, yeah.
But I was a singer the whole time. I was the front man.
Oh, really? Okay.
The whole time. I had this band out of Eastchester. Played a lot of shows.
Eastchester, New York?
Eastchester, New York.
Gotcha.
It was a great place to grow up. Had like, trees and lakes, but it was a half hour from the city.
That's awesome.
So I was able to go see shows real easy.
Killer.
Grand Central Station was like a half-hour train ride from where I grew up.
That's cool.
Singing forever and ever. I always dabbled behind the kit, our drummer's kit. And I always liked the drums. Like, I always fucking liked the drums.
Absolutely.
Always noticed good drummers. And like, one night I get a call from my friend Casey, and he goes, dude, someone's throwing a drum set away in Bronxville. And Bronxville is a super rich neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's like 3 towns away from Eastchester, and mansions. He's like, here's the address. You should go get it, because he knew like I was getting into drums a little more. Sure enough, these drums, they had heads and everything. It was no hardware or anything, just the toms and the kick. And I threw them in the car, and then I had a spot, and I went to Sam Ash and bought like the most cheapest broken cymbals and hi-hat stand, and then as the picture sees, I got a drumstick holding up a cymbal in the mount, in the tom mount.
Yeah, tom mount that goes into a drumstick with a cymbal placed over the top of the stick because it could just fit over the bead of the stick. It's hilarious. Then you got like a red china with spray paint on it with some kind of semi-broken cymbal stand, and the kit is like a black wrap with no heads, or heads only on the top and on the beater side of the bass drum, and kind of a cool looking snare drum, actually.
And I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
Like, I originally started playing with, friends. At first, though, I had this friend, Joey, and he knew every Metallica song, and I knew every Metallica song. So
yeah.
Just knowing the little bit of drums that I knew, he would come in and we'd do, like, Creeping Death and just know it. We'd both, like, know it without practicing. I was always good at being able to hear something in my head and then execute it. Mm-hmm. Even when I started playing drums for real when I moved to San Francisco. So I was playing in bands the whole time till '99 when I moved to San Francisco. And we were going to start a band that I was going to sing for, and we couldn't find a drummer. I think a drummer is the most valuable piece in any city in the world. Like,
Well, I think
if you're a good drummer, you can go anywhere in the world and like have a gig.
I think also as the way that it impacts the band, I think one of the greatest sayings out there is, show me a good band with a bad drummer versus like a bad band with a good drummer.
Band's only as good as its drummer, I've been told.
I mean, pretty much.
Some of the greatest guitar players have told me that.
Absolutely.
And then, I was going to sing for this yet-to-be-named band in San Francisco, and couldn't find a drummer. There was a drum kit in the house already.
Yeah.
Lived in this like crazy skate house, 12 of us, half pipe in the yard.
Wow.
Music instruments in the kitchen. So there's a drum set there, and I was like, I'm just gonna play drums. And then I was this band Hightower, and I kind of just learned how to play drums in front of everyone,
Yeah.
And that was it.
Wow.
So pretty consistently since then.
So as you're like stumbling through learning the instrument and playing these songs, there's just like people hanging out in the house watching you basically.
Yeah.
That would add a level of nervousness to it for me.
And then once we were like, oh my God, we actually have a set. Like the guys would play, and I would, like I said, I've been lucky to hear what I want to do in my head and be able to execute it pretty easily and just build off that. Then all of a sudden we had a set. I bought my first drum kit, which was a Pearl Export, and I wanted a really big kit because I was at High on Fire's first show.
For real?
Their first show at the Covered Wagon in San Francisco.
Nice.
Dez had this like 16-inch rack, and you know how he plays. It's like up here in his face. Like I thought that was the coolest. I was like, dude, I want a big ass drum set, and like I want to play like Dez.
I think he got a little bit from Dale Crover. I think that was one of the first guys, as did Dave Grohl. Got that. So I think it all kind of goes back to Dale Crover. But yeah, it's the similar concept for sure.
Mm-hmm. So then I got a floor tom that I converted into a rack tom. So I had like an 18-inch floor and a 16-inch rack, and like I don't know, like a 26-inch kick or something.
Massive.
Just went big, yeah.
That's awesome.
Right away, I knew what I wanted to do.
So then I guess in playing with Hightower, and every time I say that, I start to get nervous that I'm thinking of a different band, because there's the band Watchtower from Austin, Texas, that has crazy shredder prog metal thing, and then there's the Brooklyn band Tower. So I have to sort it out in my head, but I've gotten it correct thus far. So then at some point, Hightower starts doing a good bit of touring throughout the States, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, we were playing in San Francisco, and that was a pretty tight, buttoned-up metal scene there. And we were like kids.
This is pre sort of tech industry, obviously, invasion. So San Fran, I imagine, was a bit of a different world then.
Yeah, I was there for right before it, and then was there for it, and then was there for when that first one fucking crashed to the ground.
Yeah.
And that was cool. And then it is what it is now.
Right. The first time I went to San Fran was in '93, and I remember loving it. And did the similar tour. We went out with the Sequoias and the Redwoods, and did a bunch of Northern California. And my parents love drinking wine, so we did Napa and Sonoma and all that. And I just got back a month ago from Napa and Sonoma, flew into San Francisco. San Francisco, super cool. Did the whole thing. I just love it out there.
Same. Love it out there.
Anyway, that's kind of my limited experience with San Fran.
I visited a few times in the early 90s. I moved there in 99.
Right on. But y'all started touring, so tell me about some of the spots y'all were hitting.
Our first show we threw at our house because we had that crazy house with the half pipe in the yard, and the guys, we're a power trio, 3-piece.
Right.
Again, we're all skateboarders. The only bands that I've been in was with other skateboarders. It's funny.
That's amazing. That's a hell of a streak.
And every band I've been in was like, doesn't last.
Yeah, right.
But so we put our first show on at our own house, and it was great. And then our second show, no one would book us in SF because it was metal sounding, but it was instrumental, which was interesting about Hightower. This band, the Fucking Champs. You ever hear of them?
Yeah, they're killer.
Huge influence, and like gave us the confidence. Like we don't need to sing,
Yeah.
And just have these killer like thrash instrumental kind of things.
Uh-huh.
So then our second show was in Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson's a cool town.
We had a friend there, and no one would book us in SF because none of the promoters knew who we were, and we were like, in our 20s at the time. And so our buddy's like, yeah, I'll book you in Tucson. Played 2 shows in Tucson, so it was great. Went down to Tucson. Then we came back, did another show at our house in SF, and we were building up like a following,
Yeah.
Then our next show was in Vancouver, Canada, because we were friends with like 3 Inches of Blood and Streets.
Okay.
When they were all first coming up, so we played a basement with like 3 Inches of Blood. I think it was their second or third show.
Wow.
Those dudes are my buddies. till this day. Then we came back to SF's, and then we threw our own show. We'd play every Halloween. We threw our own show, and this promoter came to the show. He was like, "This show is packed, and I don't know anyone."
Yeah.
And then we started playing in SF like all the time. People started booking us. But then we'd go do these like 2-month summer tours every summer for like 7 years. We just do the U.S., play like every night.
Killer.
We do like 80 shows one summer or something.
Wow, that's nuts, man.
With like 2 nights off.
Well, when you were like those years when you were first starting out in Hightower and learning how to play and everything, were there any local guys or any particular records with any particular drummers that you were especially digging that you feel as though maybe they're, even to this day, that influence remains?
The fucking Champs.
The fucking Champs.
Their drummer, Tim Soetti, he was the guy.
Really?
He was a huge influence.
Yeah, it helps. I'm assuming that was a guy that you could see live.
Went and saw him every chance I get.
So that's a big thing and something that I tell people for sure. I think in today's age with the internet, you can watch videos of people. I think there's still something to be said for seeing it up and close and feeling the physical aspect of what they're doing and seeing it in real time as opposed to on a screen. Yeah, it's two different things. I mean, there's always so many records that I dig and whose drummers affected me as well, but there was no shortage of local guys that I became totally obsessed with growing up and seeing them playing in New Orleans and just killing,
And New Orleans, damn. Around everywhere you look, there's music going on.
There's a lot of music going on, and it's not at all a rock and roll town. It's so much built on the tradition of jazz and everything else that's associated with it. And it's a funk and brass bands and everything else. So rock and roll has always been, with the exception of in the early years, but when I was going to see it in like the 90s, it was definitely a really small scene, but with some great bands and some badass drummers that were kind of an amalgamation of all those wild influences playing within the context of rock. So it was interesting hybrid of styles that I just kind of grew up. To me, in my own isolated world, I was just like, oh yeah, this is what rock scenes are like everywhere. I've realized that what I saw in the 90s was kind of a special thing with really interesting characters and really interesting players that were affected by their surroundings. So there's definitely something to be said for in those formative years, physically seeing it, and being affected by it. And those influences can last your whole life.
Yeah, just sink their claws into you.
Absolutely.
I'm still seeing drummers that blow me away. Like,
yeah,
you never know who you're going to see.
Yeah, man. Well, in those years of touring with Hightower, where were some of the more interesting places y'all went?
Well, we always had a home in New York.
Yeah.
Because me and the guitar player, he's my fucking buddy since we were like 14 years old.
That's awesome.
And so we always had, this was like a second home. Denver was always like great shows.
Yeah.
Rochester, Border Protest. This was like 2004. And we we hooked up with our friends in Tucson.
Nice.
And drove to the border, parked our cars, and like walked over the border carrying cymbals and like guitars and walked like a mile in Nogales. There's like dead dogs and shit and like crazy border protests, like punks with like, bandanas over their faces. And I don't even remember what the venue was, if it was a venue at all. It was some crazy rundown barrio spot. And then it started pouring rain and like the ceiling started leaking and like the whole dance floor was super slippery and like the amps got blown out. So we had to plug everything through the PA. And we did the set.
Really?
I love kind of when shit doesn't go perfect. And
well, I'll say, that's one of the more exceptional shows.
There's all these Mexican like punks, and then we like did the march and everything, and that was probably one of the craziest, most memorable shows.
I would say so. Yeah, that's hard to beat, man.
And then like getting back over the border and back to Tucson, just like whooped.
Wow. Yeah, there's a strange border town that I went down to, Bisbee, Arizona. I don't know if you've ever been there. My mother lived in Tucson. That's why I was saying I really dig Tucson. And it's weird going into the border. At the time, my ex-wife, she was Colombian, and she looked clearly Latin. And we got stopped by the Border Patrol going, I think, into Bisbee or coming back from Bisbee or something. And I think she had forgotten her license or something absurd like that.
Shit's still going on today.
Yeah, I'm like, listen, you clearly look Latin. We're still in America. You bring some identification. That turned into a little bit of an ordeal. I vouched for. Thankfully, they didn't turn it into a nightmare. But to this day, when I think about and driving there was a super rare like snowy hailstorm in Arizona. So there was like a total bizarro climate, weird weather driving there.
Yeah.
And then driving back, we get
happened to
stopped
us.
by border police. I'm like, what is going on in Arizona right now? This whole thing is fucking crazy.
But I'm sure the sunset was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous. It's beautiful out there. It's Southwest in general. My mother also lived in New Mexico, and she lived in a bunch of different towns in Colorado. So between Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, I spent a lot of time out there, and I love the Southwest.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to Denver. Lawrence, Kansas was always fun too.
Really? I've been through the Panhandle, Kansas, Oklahoma. I've been through little slivers of it, but never spent any time really in Kansas.
We did like played in Gulfport and stuff. Like when did Katrina happen? 2005.
2005, yeah.
We were in Gulfport in New Orleans like a week before Katrina on tour.
Really?
And it was like we just missed it. And we came back a year later and played in Gulfport again and stayed with like these military punk kids and just telling us crazy stories.
Really?
And the place was still like washed out.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, the Gulf Coast to the east of Louisiana got super wiped out because the eye of Katrina went through there. So Mississippi, Alabama, Gulf Coast was wiped for miles. You know, New Orleans flooded, but that area was just
gnarly.
cleared. Yeah, that was a serious fucking storm.
Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those weird things where had that not happened, I wouldn't have moved to New York, and then we're talking about a completely different world for me as well. So you know, sometimes tragedies and bizarre instances lead to something that could have never happened otherwise. So it's one of those strange things, right?
Yeah, big time.
Once you start, I guess, going out doing all these tours, sounding like Hightower did a good bit of those. Like you mentioned earlier, you're starting to develop some of the network that would inevitably even...
No cell phones.
No cell phones. That's crucial.
Maybe MySpace toward the end. You know?
Maybe.
Like,
was it MapQuest directions and then asking gas stations?
Cell phones were around, but none of us wanted the responsibility of like having one. So
I hear you.
Even they were around, we were like, nope, you get it. Nope, you get it. Nope.
Yeah.
We'll just payphone it and have a notebook, people's phone numbers.
Yep.
And I think our last big tour, we had like MySpace.
Right. People had to know their bearings, and that included gas station attendants and the people that you would get directions from. I mean, it's kind of incredible in hindsight when you think about it. People they could give you very specific directions how to get to them. And we've turned our brains on in light of GPS since then, and we just don't really have that
We
sense.
got directions to swimming holes, like half pipes, like the venue.
Right, unmarked roads, go down this, that, and the
Yeah.
other. You're like, how the fuck, man? We used to do it. We did it all the time.
Did it,
This
and didn't worry about
and
it.
it worked.
Yeah.
And if anything, it might have even been better because fewer motherfuckers were there once you got there, right? So that was kind of nice. That was a perk of the pre-internet world for sure.
I got to give it up to, what were you saying, MySpace? No,
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a night off. We needed a night filled, around the New York area. And we put it on MySpace. We're like, hey, anyone have a show between here and here? Then these dudes from Rochester hit us up. They're like, yeah, come play up here. And to this day, those guys are like family.
Really?
The whole Rochester's like another home. Slashers, I just brought Slashers up there. We did a like upstate little trip. But yeah, that's my MySpace story.
Really? That
Yeah.
is wild. I think I still have one or two MySpace profiles somewhere out there. I haven't visited them.
Friendster,
in a while.
what was first?
That's a good question. For me, it was MySpace. That was the
It
first.
was just for the band. Like I didn't even have a Facebook profile till a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Resisting. Stop resisting.
I know. And now that I'm on it, I'm like, yeah, how can I not be on this so frequently and get off my phone and not have to engage in social media bullshit? That's more where I'm at right now.
I mean, I book all these Slashers tours with Instagram and Facebook. Period.
That is the incredible
Period.
aspect of it.
Like
Right.
It's a tool.
Yeah, it most certainly is.
Yeah.
And I think if you can focus on that aspect of it and not get caught up in the mundane horseshit that it can be, then it is certainly a powerful tool. That is the irony of it all.
It's proven itself.
It has. It certainly has. I guess it sounds like you did, 13 years in San Fran, you said?
Yep.
Why move back to New York? Why Brooklyn?
I wanted to try living in New York as in my adult life.
Yeah.
I wanted to try it out and, be a little closer to family.
Sure.
And I don't know, I dug my heels in deep enough in San Francisco where I feel bi-coastal,
Yeah.
I still get out there twice a year and play.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man.
We're hooking up with Hightower on this next Slashers trip. We're playing Bottom of the Hill.
Are you going to double dip?
August 25th. Oh, yeah.
Nice. Double dipping on the drums.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, no problem.
Nice. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that band's been around for, 18 years?
Yeah.
And still doing it.
Still doing it. We got a deep bag of songs, Like Slashers and Hightower make sense playing together, but it's different,
For sure.
Yeah.
Do y'all get a chance to rehearse once you go out there?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can do a little bit of rehearsal.
Play for a couple hours and we're good.
Yeah.
We just played here. The guys came out. We played at Union Pool.
That's awesome.
Jammed for 2 nights and have the best time.
That's killer. That was that recent Union Pool show y'all
Yeah.
played? I heard that was a good night.
Yeah, 420.
Nice. Yeah, that lined up nicely.
Yes. Silly Pink Bunnies event. Shout out.
Yeah. Well, shit, Shane, it was fun talking to you, man. Congrats on this new record. It sounds great. No shortage of good thrash energy. Guitars, drums, vocals, bass, everything sounds great on it.
D-beat.
Yeah.
Anyone needs a session D-beat drummer, get at me.
Holla at you, boy. Right on. Yeah, it sounds great. Congrats on it. Be on the lookout for it, everybody. August 2nd. For you Brooklyn, New York, tri-state area folks, August 3rd, the show. Mm-hmm. So swing out the Bushwick and get you some skate, thrash, punkin' good time energy.
That's right.
Fuck yeah, man. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Jody.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Shane for hanging out and rapping. It was a good time, and always good to catch up with local players here in the Brooklyn scene. Be on the lookout of that new self-titled album out Friday, August 2nd, as well as the follow-up show the next day, Saturday, August 3rd, out at Hard Times in Brooklyn for a little skate day thrash partying happening thing. Get up on it. We'll catch you on the flippy floppy. Crash, bang, boom.